I'd like to ask about Berkshire's growth, specifically your acquisition outlook and appetite. Has the phone been ringing?
The phone doesn't ring very often at Berkshire. That's partly because, well, we set out our criteria in the annual report for what we're looking for, and we're now looking for larger and larger things. So when we start saying that we want to buy businesses that earn 75 or 100 million at a minimum before tax, that weeds out a lot of phone calls. And I would say that if we get a couple of 3 or 4 serious phone calls a year that sort of meet our criteria that look like they might be a possibility, that's a good year. I like that. I don't think there's been any major change in the frequency that something comes along that might interest us. The answer is, in terms of being interested, we're as interested as ever. I mean, we wrote a big check and issued shares in the connection with BNSF, but I would love it if Monday morning my phone rings with some big deal. We'll figure out a way to do it. Charlie?
Yeah, it's amazing to me that we have been as successful as we have been in buying desirable places. And it's human revulsion that has helped us, because many of the people who sell to us are so smart that they're revolted by almost everything else. They don't want to sell into some fee-driven buying system that doesn't care about their employees or their business. They finally decide they want to join this one. They don't want to join the alternatives. And of course, that's marvelous for us. We've got a screening device out there that is protecting us to some extent from the wrong sort of people. And very few people have this particular look. We get offered things by people who would not sell to anybody else. Well, that is really peculiar. And it's happened, how many times?
Well, it's happened, yeah, and on an important ones. I mean, there's one I've mentioned before, so I can mention the name. I mean, when I heard from ISCAR, I never heard of ISCAR before. I never heard of Eitan Wertheimer, who wrote me. But he basically told me, may have been quite specific, they either wanted to sell to Berkshire Hathaway or they didn't want to sell to anybody. And we met and we made a deal. And there was another person, I won't even define exactly the time period, but he came in and he'd been thinking about it for about a year on his business, and he'd built it over many decades. And he said there were 3 possibilities. One was to sell it to a competitor, and he said they would have ideas immediately about all the people they could take out of his place and move the headquarters and everything, and they would dismantle something that he'd spent 30 years or so building. And he decided that he didn't want to do that, even though it was probably worth more to a competitor, because that's often the case, than to anybody else. And then he looked at selling to a leveraged buyout firm that now would call itself a private equity firm. And he decided he did not want his place being basically a piece of meat that would be resold in not that many years. He really wanted to find a permanent home. So he said, when I come to you, I don't come to you because you're so damned attractive. He said, you're the only guy left. And we bought the business. That happens from time to time, and it's accidental. It's when something happens in someone's life that they decide they really want to assure a permanent home. It may be because a family isn't getting along. It may be, a half a dozen reasons. Maybe somebody wants to monetize it because they want to give away a lot of money. But periodically that will come up, and we are a logical place to get the call, and we will get the calls, but there's not much we can do to accelerate the process or do anything of the sort. We are ready to act when it happens. I mean, if I get a call and it's a $10 billion deal on Monday and I like it, I will say yes. I mean, and I'll figure out how we do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's over. It may be, in fact, it will be slower than it was in the early days, but that's not so bad considering how much richer we all are than we were then.